Hi, this is John Bradbury, and in this video I'm going to discuss the practice of effective listening. What I'm going to cover in this video is an introduction to effective listening, the way we listen and how to improve your listening skills. Listening is a leadership skill, and the action list at the end, together with the coaching practice that comes with this module. So first of all, an introduction to effective listening. So effective listening is a way of bringing a focus to our listening process, which is something that we don't normally do. And it's starting to consider how well we are listening to the people that we interact with every day. And it's starting to listen for their contribution rather than judging and assessing as a sort of default way of listening. So we may not always judge and assess as our default way of listening, but what we're doing with this effective listening module is really focusing in on our own process and being willing to be influenced and using our level of curiosity as a measure of how well we are listening. So the higher our level of curiosity, the likelihood that our quality of listening is much better. And when you listen in this way with people, it starts to become a very useful tool for influencing people, for keeping team members motivated and engaged. Any conflicts that arise, you can apply listening skills in this way. Effective listening will help calm conflict down and resolve it. And also, if you're encountering any resistance to what you're trying to achieve or do with the team, then taking time to listen to team members will really help with overcoming that. And I'm going to talk now about the way we listen. So just adding to what I've just said, how conscious are we of our listening quality? And I would say that most people, most of the time, don't even think about their listening quality. They're more interested in what they're going to say next rather than how well they are listening. And one of the things that gets in the way of our listening is that we have filters. And I would call this our automatic way of listening. It's influenced and characterized by internal filters that we have that stop us effectively listening to people. And we have filters for all sorts of things, for different people and for situations. For example, you might go to a meeting regularly that you don't like going to, so straight away you have a filter for that meeting. And these filters have an impact on us all the time, but we don't necessarily think about it at all. We just plod along doing our thing, but not realizing that these filters are interrupting what could be a much more effective way of listening. And so here's some examples of filters, and there are more than these, but here's some examples of common filters that exist, and you may recognize some of the filters that are in this grid. You might have encountered them in yourself or in other people who have been listening to you. You may recognize that some people react in some of the ways that are listed here. But these are all, really sort of influential ways that we stop ourselves listening at a high level. So how do we take responsibility for all those filters? So there's a lot of different information here. I need your approval. I'm right. You're wrong. You don't listen. I don't want to upset you. All these sort of different things that are going on. How do we take responsibility for that? Well, it's not a matter of fighting the filter. It's really a question of choosing to put it to one side or park it. I talk about parking filters or pausing our filters. And then we find that part of us that is silent. The silent part in us is the part that does the effective listening without the filter in play. And so once we start to recognize our filters, then we can consciously choose to stop their influence and then just get really present with someone and just make your 100% of your focus on what that person is saying, without any sort of chatter interrupting what they're saying, and just make an effort really just to really fully understand what someone is saying. And in that way, we're sort of very much diluting the impact of those filters, and we're just starting to become much better at listening. So here's a comparison between automatic and effective listening. And on the left-hand side, these are descriptions of how we might listen automatically with a filter. So, in listening for agreement, the filter is I must find agreement. And the effective way of listening instead of that would be to listen for possibility. So it's like, I don't necessarily need to find agreement. We just need to find the best way forward together. So when you move from automatic listening to effective listening, what you're also doing at the same time is you're starting to practice collaboration and working together more effectively, rather than, the automatic way of listening doesn't promote collaboration. So we go from listening for agreement to listening for possibility, which has a very different flavor to it. And then the next one is listening to win. So clearly the filter there is I must win. My filter of listening is I must win this conversation. And if we move from that to listening to make positive steps, then there's no need for competition. We're just looking for the best way forward. We want to make some positive steps together and find the best way forward. Listening to oppose you. So you may have had conversations, I'm sure we've all had them, where people oppose everything we say, and it's almost like they're looking to argue. And so, listening to oppose you, what's the filter there? Well, the filter is, without saying it, is I must oppose what this person is saying, whatever the reason for that is. That's the filter. And to shift from that to listening for someone's commitment is a very different way of listening. If you contrast those two ways of approaching a conversation. So listening for your commitment, you might say, well, there is a filter there, but it's a positive filter. It's like, I want to find your commitment. I want to recognize your commitment. And so if I listen in that way, I'm supporting the person who's speaking, and I'm looking for ways to build them up, which is a very positive way to work with someone. Listening from I know, so that filter is, the filter there might be, I know all this, I've heard it all before. So that's going to really downgrade the quality of listening, whereas to move into listening with curiosity is a great shift to make, because if I'm curious, if you're speaking to someone and they're showing a lot of curiosity about what you're saying, that really encourages you to speak more and to really work out what you want to say and share your ideas. And so to offer curiosity to someone is actually a great service to them, because it's really helping them work out what they think, and they're able to speak and understand what their own thoughts are. Listening to fix is, I must fix this problem, or I must fix you, as the filter. Whereas listening to understand is there's nothing to fix at all. I'm just listening to build up my understanding of what you're saying. Again, very different flavor. Listening to understand, much more collaborative. And listening for who's right, there's a sort of what's right, what's wrong, very black and white approach, shifting into listening for the best interpretation. So again, here we're looking for the best way forward, and just giving our perspective about the best way forward and listening to the other person. And then again, this is more of a collaborative approach. So you can see here, the sort of transforming from automatic listening to effective listening. These are all examples of ways of shifting our listening quality so that we become a more collaborative person, and we encourage others to speak up and to be heard. And don't underestimate the power of this. I've seen it happen many times, that people who start to listen in this way have a significant impact on their team members and people around them. So it sounds like it might be trivial, but it is subtle, but it's not trivial. This is a very powerful practice when done well. So I'll talk a little bit more about the way we listen in this slide. And obviously paying attention is a big part of effective listening. And so some of the ways that we pay attention is, we say no to distractions, and we just basically, if someone comes to speak to us or we go to speak to someone else, what we do is we pay attention to them and we exclude anything else. So we don't let our phone interrupt us. If we're on our computer, we would turn away from our computer. We make eye contact with the person, sort of turn towards them so that they know that they've got your full attention. And that's it. So paying attention is giving your full attention to the speaker. And that's basically what we want to do. Manage those distractions, whatever they are, that are interrupting your ability to pay full attention and give your full attention to the speaker. You want to manage those distractions. And another way of improving the listening quality is replicating to check for understanding. So that might be just saying, let me just make sure I've understood you. Are you saying, and then you sort of dot point what the person has just said. So am I correct in thinking you're saying this, this, and this? Is that what you're trying to say? And when you do that, when you replicate and to check for understanding, then someone who's speaking with you knows that you're really paying attention and wanting to understand what they're saying, and then they can correct you if you've missed a point. And then you're getting on the same page by going through that process. The next point is we don't have to listen all the time. So I do want to make the point that we can manage our availability and interruptions, and we may decide, well, what I'm doing right now is too high a priority to stop and listen, rather than stopping and half listening and still thinking about the thing that you are working on. Don't do that. Either choose to listen or choose not to at this moment and just say, I can't stop now to listen and I want to give you my full attention. So why don't we meet a bit later at such and such a time, and then I can give you my full attention. And then you're showing that you respect the person and you want to listen to them, but there's just a higher priority right now and you're managing your availability. So listening is a leadership skill. So hopefully what I've said already has started to sort of point out how this skill of effective listening can be used in leadership. And, as I said before, it's like, why is it a leadership skill? Well, if you're leading a team of people, obviously you want to be listening to what they're saying, and you want to role model good listening because you want them to also listen to you. So if you role model good listening with the team members, they feel understood, they feel seen and heard. You're hearing them, what's being said in the team much more clearly and much more detail when you focus on your own listening process. So basically, by doing that, as a frontline leader, you're getting everybody on the same page in the team by the quality of your listening. And if your listening quality is really low, then people are not getting on the same page, and they're going to be frustrated because they don't feel heard and seen by you, the leader. So it's definitely a good idea to make a choice to really be the best listener that you can. And if you think about the instructions or the requests that you give to the team, they're going to be much better quality requests if you understand where the team are and where the individuals are on the team. So, if you listen really closely to what team members are saying, then what you say next will be very relevant to their world. And if you think about the impact on you of someone who is a good listener and someone who is a poor listener, then you'll understand what the team members are experiencing when you're listening well and when you're not listening well. Because if you've no doubt experienced people who don't listen very well and people who do listen well, and the difference is like chalk and cheese. And I know from experience that the people who I respect most in my work history, my career history, would be the people, it's no coincidence that they would be the best listeners. And they were the people that took time to understand where I was and where I was coming from. So, the two go together. Listening does build trust, it builds respect. And it takes focus and uses energy. So it's not a passive process. It's something that you choose to do and choose to put your energy into. And it's superb skill for building alignment and trust, as I've already touched on with the team. If all the team that you lead feel heard and understood by you, that is going to be a very different team from one where that isn't true. So, that's how you can really build a highly engaged team. And you can resolve conflicts and calm emotional situations down with the power of your listening in that leadership role. So when you don't listen well, what are the consequences? So you can have a think about that. When you haven't listened well in the past, and this can be at home or at work, there will probably have been some consequences. And so that's just reinforcing the idea of committing to a really high quality, effective listening process as much as possible. And when we look at the coaching practice, which we will in a minute or so, this will bring a focus to the listening skills. So I'm going to be asking you to practice some effective listening after this module. Just a point not to confuse effective listening with agreement. So some people might think that when you're practicing effective listening that you're agreeing with them, but that may not always be the case. You can really practice effective listening, and that puts you in a position to work out what you agree with and what you don't agree with. But because you've practiced the listening in the first place, people are more likely to respect your perspectives afterwards. Because you've taken the time to really hear and understand them, then they will see that happening. And then when you respond by agreeing with one thing and maybe disagreeing with another, they're more likely to hear that. And if you can develop the skill, if you haven't already, but if you could develop the skill of switching to really high quality listening in the middle of a conflict, then it only takes one person in a conflict to calm it down. Two people might be arguing. If one of them switches into listening and then just really trying to understand the other person, then that's going to calm things down straight away. So it only takes one person to influence the relationship in that way. That's very useful to know outside of work as well, in close personal relationships. If you choose to start being a better listener in those relationships, the quality of the relationship will change. This happened with my daughter and I when she was younger. She's 21 now, but when she was about 9, I remember I used to pick her up from school and she would just start talking and tell me all about her experiences at school and what had gone wrong and what had gone okay, and challenges that she'd experienced during the day. And I would become the dad who needs to fix that problem. So I had this filter of I must fix the problem for you. I know what's best for you. And I started to get this. She would get very angry with me when I started to try and fix the problem that she had described. And I realized eventually, it took a few times, but I realized eventually that she just wanted to be heard and understood. She didn't want me to do problem solving and fix her problem at all. And when I stopped doing that and just focused on listening to her, our relationship quality shifted completely. And it's still the same now. I still practice effective listening with her a lot, and it really helps our relationship. And there's a lot of trust there, because she knows that she can speak and she'll be heard. Whereas back when she was 9, I was too busy being the dad with the advice that wasn't wanted. So I learned a lesson. So that was me, switching to effective listening in the middle of a conflict with my daughter who was getting annoyed with me, and that worked and changed the relationship. It didn't only calm things down, it changed the relationship. So that's worth considering. So here's the action items coming out of this video. Complete the effective listening coaching practice in the resources section and answer the questions in the coaching practice and share those answers in the community. I'll go over those in a second. And then start practicing or start being aware of your listening process with your team. And if you can, there's room for improvement, then start implementing that improvement in your listening quality, and notice how the quality of the conversations change when you show up as this person who's got good listening. And then please share any results you get in the community, because we can learn from your experience, and it's really good to share these examples so that we can encourage each other. Okay, so just a couple of quotes before I go and have a look at this coaching practice. But from Ernest Hemingway, when people talk, listen completely. Most people never listen. And from Scott Peck, you cannot truly listen to anyone and do anything else at the same time. And that's so true. That's the way we start to pay attention, by not trying to do anything else at the same time. So good. So I'm just going to go and find here we are. Here's a coaching practice. So it's a practice of effective listening at home and effective listening at work. So we want to bring a listening focus to life away from work, and starting with family and friends. Choose moments to have a daily practice of just listening to understand, and challenge yourself to listen without comment. So no judgments, no criticism, just listen. And then only when you're speaking, it's just to ask questions so you can better understand what is being said. And obviously, you can't do this all the time, or it would be challenging to do this all the time. But it's like you can choose moments when you do engage in this practice. Maybe you'll say, right, this evening I'm going to do this for an hour, where I just choose to listen to my partner when he or she comes in, and I'll just spend an hour listening to them in this way. And one sign is if you start to get a comment from them that what's happening, you're really listening to me all of a sudden, or you've changed, you've started listening, you're making progress if you start to get that feedback. And then effective listening at work, bringing the same focus, choosing particular moments where you're going to have a raised awareness of your listening process. It could be a meeting, for example, where an important meeting where you need to raise your game on the listening front. And again, it's just listening to understand and ask questions and be curious. Just gauge the level of your curiosity. And then there's some review questions at the bottom here. What impact are you having with your listening at home and with friends and at work? Are some people easier to listen to than others? If someone's difficult to listen to, it normally means you've got a filter running, some sort of filter about them. And do you ever find yourself giving up listening and tuning out? What impact is that having? And what filter, just thinking in general, what filters are you aware of as you practice effective listening? So this is the coaching practice, and I'm very interested to hear how you go with this, and definitely welcome any comments in the community so that we can discuss those and make listening a real focus in the community, because I think this is an underrated skill, but probably I would almost say the most important skill to develop as a frontline leader and to get really good at. So thank you for listening to me, and you'll hear me again in module 4, or you'll meet me at one of the group coaching sessions with the community. Thanks again.